Night had fallen, and a well-dressed man in his 40s hurried into a dark alley. This was Zhou, a well-known restaurant chain owner in the city. Recently, his business had been declining sharply, leaving him desperate for unconventional solutions. 10 years ago, Zhou was just a small restaurant owner. By cutting costs on ingredients and underpaying employees, his small shop gradually expanded into a chain. Along the way, controversies abounded. Suppliers accused him of defaulting on payments, employees complained about unpaid overtime, and customers occasionally found foreign objects in their meals. Yet Zhou had always managed to smooth things over with his connections in both the underworld and local government. Over the past 6 months, however, Zhou's fortunes took a turn for the worse. Customers dwindled inexplicably, veteran employees resigned in droves, and a former head chef filed a labor violation complaint. Zhou hired thugs to intimidate the chef, who later dropped the case out of fear. Another disgruntled worker leaked unsanitary kitchen practices to the media, only to have acid thrown at her door days later. This frightened others into silence, but even Zhou's usual tactics couldn't stop the growing tide of bad press and financial losses. The tipping point came when former employees and suppliers began exposing Zhou's misdeeds online. Negative publicity exploded, and Zhou, unable to contain it, was forced to consider an unconventional remedy. At the end of the alley stood a dilapidated house. Its faded wooden sign read, "Mystic Guidance." Zhou pushed open the door, and a strong wave of sandalwood incense hit him. Inside, the room was dimly lit by flickering candles, their shadows casting eerie patterns on the walls. An elderly man with a long white beard sat behind a wooden table, adjusting a brass compass. The swirling incense seemed almost alive, forming ghostly tendrils in the air. "Sit," the old man commanded without lifting his head. Zhou hesitated before obeying, feeling strangely unsettled by the man's voice, as though he had heard it before. The fortune teller, who introduced himself as Master Xuan, began casting Zhou's fortune. His bony fingers flipped ancient coins and adjusted the compass with practiced precision. The metallic clinks echoed ominously in the silence, setting Zhou on edge. Finally, Xuan looked up, his cloudy eyes suddenly piercing. "Your fortune isn't lacking in wealth," he intoned, "but your treasury is cracked. A dark force is consuming your blessings." Zhou frowned. "Dark force? What does that mean?" Xuan's gaze sharpened. "The wealth you've amassed is tainted by debts, not of money, but of resentment. Those you've wronged left behind anger and suffering, which has grown into venom. This venom is eroding your fortune. If you don't change your ways, the consequences will extend beyond money." Zhou snorted, the tension dissipating. "You sound like a scam artist. Do you really think I'd believe this? Thanks, but I'll handle my own problems." Xuan's expression darkened. "Your fate is yours to bear. I can do no more. Leave." Zhou brushed off Xuan's warnings as superstitious nonsense. Instead, he became more ruthless. He slashed wages, purchased inferior ingredients, and falsified financial records to evade taxes. At night, faint whispers sometimes echoed in his ears, urging him to stop, but he ignored them. Ambition drove Zhou to target Fortune Hall, a historic restaurant known for its traditional cuisine but struggling financially. Zhou unleashed a campaign of harassment. He bribed officials to conduct surprise inspections, spread defamatory rumors, and hired thugs to disrupt business. The pressure forced Fortune Hall's owner, Wang Deming, to sell. On the day of the sale, Wang knelt before Zhou. "Please," he begged, tears streaming down his face. "This restaurant has been in my family for generations. Show some mercy." Zhou sneered, tossing a contract onto the table. "Sign it, or I'll ruin you completely." Defeated, Wang signed. As Zhou left the meeting, a sudden gust of wind rattled the restaurant sign, but he paid it no mind. During renovations, workers discovered a hidden shrine behind a crumbling wall. Inside was a black idol, its features blurred but exuding an ominous aura. Longtime employees begged Zhou to leave the idol untouched, calling it the guardian of the restaurant. "Superstitious nonsense," Zhou snapped. "Get rid of it." Reluctantly, the workers removed the idol. As it was carried away, dark clouds gathered and a clap of thunder shook the air. Zhou dismissed it as coincidence. Opening night arrived, and Zhou hosted a lavish banquet. While giving a speech, a sharp pain pierced his chest. Staggering off stage, he followed a metallic stench to the kitchen. There, utensils clattered violently, as though moved by unseen hands. That night, Zhou's nightmares began. He dreamt of the idol strangling him, and when he woke, icy handprints lingered on his neck. A senior employee revealed the building's dark past. It had been built over a mass grave, and the shrine was meant to appease restless spirits. Without it, calamity was inevitable. Zhou dismissed the warning, but his empire soon collapsed. Food safety violations led to closures. Whistleblowers exposed his crimes, and creditors swarmed him like vultures. Desperate, Zhou fled to Fortune Hall on a stormy night. There, spectral figures of his victims surrounded him. Their hollow voices whispered, "Repay what you owe." Clutching his chest, Zhou collapsed, his heart stopping in terror. The next morning, his body was found in the alley behind the restaurant, his face twisted in unspeakable horror. Officially, the cause was cardiac arrest, but locals whispered of karma. Months later, Fortune Hall reopened under its original owners. Their first act was to rebuild the shrine and restore the black idol, ensuring the spirits remained at peace.